welcome back to Mike's Miniatures, the place for all things mini wargaming. And in today's mini hobby night episode, we're going to be building a character, well, not building, but painting the character that is a Judiciar for my Astral Templars Space Marine chapter. This is the shoulder pad that normally the chaplains or Judiciars, I'm going to totally mispronounce how you're supposed to say that. Put in the comments if you know the proper way to say it. But this is the kind of the shoulder pad that I kind of worked and designed on to what I would eventually like to have most of them have here. Here's a quote from them: "In silence the judgment comes, in stillness the emperor watches, and through fire penance is made." And if you remember, this is the kit-bashed model of my custom Judiciar. He is going to be a named character in my army named Judiciar Thorn Embersoul. So here we go. I've sped up the video here to help keep this going, but this may be a slightly longer than normal painting video. It's probably, it looks like it's going to be just shy of an hour, probably not even that long, if I remember right. So, but we'll just get started with the painting here. And all Judicars and chaplain-like models have black armor for that. So I got my Aben black, put it on my wet palette here, and we're just going to go to town on all the armor that's supposed to be black. As a little lore, as I was building this model and watching some YouTube videos from other talented YouTuber creators here, I did learn that the Judiciar Space Marine is basically a chaplain in training, and their main role is to kind of recite the oaths that the Space Marines have made and kind of enforce those other Space Marines to follow the oaths that they have taken, and if they refuse to fulfill or follow them in any way, especially in battle, the job of the Judiciar is to basically execute those Space Marines. And it's kind of like the Space Marine version of a commissar, but they're not actually commissars. It's definitely a little bit on the interesting side, but it's still also pretty cool. The models, the official Games Workshop model, is pretty cool with his unique relic executioner blade and things like that. And they're supposed to have like a holy relic symbol that's the big old hourglass that allows them to slow down time in the lore and stories and things like that. My guy doesn't really have his hourglass kind of a deal. It's kind of just implied that he has it behind his cape a little bit with some bits that I had, but I'm not really going to make that a predominant. His predominant thing is his sword and his left arm that I'm going to do here. So as you can see, I'm still going in and paint as I'm getting all the details of the armor black. I'm leaving the left arm completely alone because I'm going to make that an entire silver arm. And with the shoulder pad that I picked, it's actually a Grey Knight shoulder pad here, but it's the closest one I had in my bits box at the time that looks like a Death Watch shoulder pad. And in my Space Marine chapter, the Space Marines who serve in the Death Watch for any reason are automatically promoted to the first company, which is the veterans of the Space Marine chapter. And as we remember, the veterans of the Space Marine chapter have the white armor with the gold helmet and such. But if they've been in the Death Watch or served in the Death Watch, their left arm is still the silver with the Death Watch shoulder pad to show that they are they've served in the Death Watch there. And being as he's a chaplain or part of the chaplaincy, his armor is going to be all black instead of all white. But his tilt shield, I'm going to have it mostly white to show that he's in the first company, and that's where we're going to have the chapter symbol, just a generic one rather than the fancy one that I designed at the beginning of this video, because I picked the wrong kind of shoulder pad to be able to do that freehand design. But I'm going to be partnering this guy with my Blade Guard veterans mostly for now, because the Space Marine Army of the Argent Templars I've got tabletop is still pretty small. So he'll be leading my Blade Guard veterans. So, and being they have the dark blue tabards and things like that on them, I figured let's make his robes in that same dark blue. So that's what I am doing here, is just creating those dark blue robes, which I think contrast pretty well with the black right now. Then after those two colors have dried for a little bit there, I'm getting some of my silver. This is where I'm going to now start doing the arm and the silver details on the Marine. Just thinning out my silver paint just a little bit there. And then there we go, right onto the arm. Kind of making it look like if this model, since I chose him to be a Judiciar, he could also technically, I guess, could have been a librarian or anything like that. But nah, I think I like him as a Judiciar. I like the rules of them, things like that. It's just getting into those fine details now with that silver arm is a little bit tricky, but. And then there's the blade. I didn't have much of a relic executioner style blade, surprisingly. I mean, I had one that kind of looked like it from the Black Templars expansion pack kit from the combat patrol it had, but I wanted to save that for my Black Templars army rather than use that for this current army. So I found basically the commander's version in the Grey Knights box, Terminator box, and it's a big old power sword that's as long or slightly longer than what the Captain and Gravis armor's power sword would have been. So I figured that will make a great executioner power blade kind of a deal here. And it has the eye for the Inquisition symbol stamped into the blade, so that would make sense that maybe while he was a classic Space Marine that was chosen to serve within the Death Watch, as he was starting his Judiciar training as a chaplain. With that, his relic blade was one that he grabbed from the Inquisition weaponry that happened to would have gone to some Grey Knights or something like that. I don't know. That's the fun part about creating your lore and having your own headcanon kind of a deal. There is really no wrong answer, and if people don't like it, that's tough. If you like it, that's how it is. So there's nothing wrong with it that way. So that's my headcanon. He served in the Death Watch. That's where he got his relic blade for his executioner blade right here, and that's why he still has his Death Watch arm, but his armor is called black even though he's in the first company. As here now, I'm going to do all the little base coats for the whites and the purity seals and things like that. And I guess this would be a good time with why I didn't do a plain shoulder pad on the other side for him to do the chapter symbol, and instead going to do it on the tilt shield that he has right there. I wanted him to. Why he was chosen for the Death Watch is maybe he did something great, like help the chapter master in some way, or during the original. Because remember, my chapter is still from the Indominus Crusade, so they're a fairly young chapter for all things considered. Maybe he helped the chapter master while he was just a general infantry, and with his zeal and things like that. So he earned a battle honor, which would be the skull and the little leaves, things like that. So that's what he has on that shoulder pad. So with the white, I base coated the skull, and while it was drying, I went and did all these leather bits right here with the Rhinox hide to get that base coat down so they stand out against the armor right here. Being very careful not to go over things I've already done here. And then here comes the red, any and all red details. So the eye lenses, the purity wax seals, the handle on the sword, anything that I can think of that'd be red. My chaplains, I'm wanting to do more of a gold eye lens for like the actual chaplains, but Judiciars who his job is to enforce the other Marines to do their jobs, and if they don't, they're going to execute them. I want them to have more intimidating presence, so that's why he has the red eye lenses, and instead of the gold, like a normal chaplain would normally have in my army. Plus, red just looks better for the lenses too. Helps them stand out a little bit more. And once the red is kind of dried, the white is also kind of dried and things, but I'm just adding a different color red for the book, a more kind of a darker red. Right now it doesn't look darker with it being a wet, but the corn red is what I believe this one was. It dries a much darker red than Mephiston red does. So I wanted to have that as kind of like a two-tone, especially since his book of oaths and things like that he has slung on his belt there is a prominent feature on the model. I wanted it to be separate from the purity seal. And then obviously any spillage over on the armor, the black, I'm just touching it up here. Fix it all up. Looking pretty good there. Now I'm going to do the gold details, and all the chaplains in the armor will have gold trim with the black armor because I think that just looks the best, as well as the weapons and things like that. So as you can see, I'm putting on the pommel and the handguard. Soon I'm going to, right there, we're going to have that all be gold against the metal blade, the shining metal blade. And just these details can be a little bit hard, so having a very focused, pointed brush is very helpful in this situation. Now just shake up the paints a little bit there to get some more. Using my palette to thin it out for better control on the brush, let it spread easier and not clump onto the blade. Then here we go, we start with the trim, being very, very careful, small, deliberate strokes. Trying to use the edge of the brush because this is a raised detail, just let the details kind of make themselves pop. And if not to worry if it spills on any of the parts that need to be still black, you can always go back with the black and do touch-ups here. So here, basically this was a Blade Guard veteran's arm, so it has the little veteran symbol. So I'll put that there. The skull on the back, I'm going to make that stand out by being gold. And then just it's technically a Grey Knight symbol, but let's just say that he is, with the Judiciar becoming a veteran, that I wanted that to kind of stand out. He got that symbol instead of the Inquisition eye on his shoulder pad after graduating from the Death Watch and back into the Angel Knights. And it's from here, I'm going to do a different color. We're going to do some green for the laurels that are around the skull on the shoulder pad for victory. I'm going to do a little base coat of Dark Angel green from the Army Painter. This is basically very similar to the dark green of the Dark Angels. For 40K here, it's a good base coat. If you're wanting a nice, beautiful dark green to match that armor, I would definitely get this paint for that. But putting it down, it definitely helps make that shoulder stand out. The black, the white, and the green with the gold trim. It looks really nice and eye-catching on there. And then while that was drying, I'm going to do my first highlight with Mechanicus Standard Gray on all of the black armor to help make the edges of the black armor pop as much as I can, because this is going to be a character model for my army. I want him to kind of stand out, and he's going to stand out anyway, being one of the few that actually wears black armor compared to the rest of my army that has either silver or white armor. The only other armor color in my army is for the librarians. They are in a kind of a dark blue, a dark metallic blue armor for like standard librarians. So, but I don't have one of those models yet. I'll get when we get to that in my hobby journey here. If you're continuing to follow along, that'll be a fun addition to the army from there. But just take your time when you're doing all of the edges of something in black trim. As you can see, that Mechanicus Standard Gray really helps make the edges of the armor pop. So you can kind of see the details of what they are. My first army ever with Warhammer 40K was a Black Templars army, and this is typically how Abaddon Black is my base coat, and then Mechanicus Standard Gray is the highlight color I do for edge highlights now for it, because I just love how it looks. And even though it's a little bit on the bright side and looks a little ridiculous, when you add a wash of either Agrax or Known Oil after doing the edge highlight, it definitely helps it blend all together, and you can still see the edges all nice and crisp. So we're doing it on the backpack here. I debated whether to do it on every single one of those little vent holes, but I thought, nah, that's going to be a little too much work here. I will just focus on the actual sharp edges on the backpack. And then just getting on his faceplate, and then the collar, a little bit on the trim. That's a fun thing with these, with the body that I used here. That was the Stormcast Eternals from the paint box there. You could easily probably use these guys as like a ground without their jetpack sanguinary guard for a Blood Angels army, because it almost identically matches those models, but not with this guy. I figure this is like a unique pattern that they just haven't seen yet, or like a Phobos turning back into Tacticus kind of an armor. And then after letting everything dry for a little bit, now it's time to do the Pallid Witch Flesh to get that brighter white on the tilt shield. And I'm just doing the whole base coat of it on that. This is basically the only thing that denotes that he is in the first company with the whole armor right there. Looking good. Now here we go. I did Drukhari Violet. I wanted my power blade on this character to stand out, and almost all of my power blades are blue, so I wanted him to have a Samuel L. Jackson vibe, and I wanted him to have a purple sword. So I'm giving him a purple power blade that way here. And I think having the base coat of the metallics and then doing the wash over it, and even though it's a fine area, it's I'm making sure it's very, very thin, and I'm trying to guide the pooling to happen on the extreme edges and inside, like the monogram on the eye of the sword, which is really nice. A lot of shaking, sorry about that. Here we go. And now we got the brighter green for the shoulder pads, which I'm going to do. It's very, very thin, so I'm spreading it out as much as I can. I had to shake the bottle. That's what all the shaking was. Getting it nice and super, super thin, very fine bore hand control. And I'm just picking out the tops of the leaves and kind of help making them stand out a little bit more before I wash the model. So it makes that green really shine through, that this is a elegant piece of decorative part of his armor that shows that he's an honored character of the chapter. Looks pretty good to me. I'll set that to dry for a second, just shake up a new paint, which is going to be the wash of Agrax Earthshade. Like I do with all of my models, I love Agrax Earthshade. Take my wash brush, I had to make sure it was all good, and then just make a mess of everything. Dip it all over, get it on the armor, get it on the body, get it on the cloaks, book, everything. And then I just continued going into all the details on it, trying to not let it pool too heavy and over darken. That's why I keep going over a lot of the same places twice after it's settled for a quick second, just to help lap up, and if there's not enough, I'll add more. The more inside of his cloak and everything, I'm letting that get be pool very dark and heavy, because it's going to emphasize the shadows, which I want to have happen. And as I'm sure you can kind of see, I'm a little bit quick there, you see how the edge highlight of the Mechanicus with the wash being put over it, it's still there, it's still visible, but it looks a lot cleaner now that we have the wash on the helmet and things like that. It kind of just blends those colors in really well. And this will help my dark blue cloak get even darker blue when I add the wash to it like that. Now let's just let it dry. And after letting it sit and dry for a while, I then go back to some of my base colors like the Pallid Witch Flesh here, and I just fix up all the dirty to make it shine white again. Any edge highlights or anything like that. But in this case with the shield, I just want that to be a pure white, but I'll leave the wash on all the purity seals to make them look like they're physically different. They're the tattered paper, like cloth paper kind of a deal. And here we go, we have the shining silver, which I normally use for my Argent Templar standard Marines to make them have that extra shiny brand new armor. In this case, I'm just using that for his silver arm to help pop out some of the details, a lot of edge and base highlights here to just kind of help make that arm shine, but I don't want it to be too much, so I'm trying to be very careful, like going around the rivets here, leave the wash that kind of pooled along those rivets. And just, I want this arm to stand out as like, yes, this guy was in the Death Watch. This is not an illusion here. So just taking my sweet time with the details and kind of edge highlighting / dry brushing on all of the silver with that there. And you'll see once I get up here closer to the words, first I'm going to do along the edges of the trim. And get the vents on the backpack while I'm here. Get that last edge to highlight. That's very hard to reach space. Okay. And as from here, I basically get the silver and I kind of do a dry brush technique here where I put it on and get a lot of it off as much as I can, but still enough paint in the bristles that I then just kind of drag highlight over all the letters, because I still want that wash that makes those letters pop, stand out there. And then from here, I'm going to do a little bit of a dry brush onto the blade to bring it that bright, shiny silver, especially for the edges of the sword. Loving how that looked. Then I'm going to take that in, and just any other silver bits, I'm going to tidy that up. Then we've got the red, going over all of the purity seals to bring them back to the bright red color. But I'm kind of leaving the book alone, except for a little bit of an edge highlight that you'll see me do here in a minute. Here we go. Just kind of mixing some red with that bright silver right here, because I wanted to do something new with those eyes, and I wanted to kind of give them a little bit of a shine. And rather than add white, I figured I'd add a little bit of the silver to give it that metal fleck shine here. And in person, it looks a little bit better than it does here on camera, but I do love it. Now we're going back to that corn red for the book, and I'm basically just doing an edge highlight, and I'm letting the body be that extra dark right there on the edges of both sides of the book. And you can kind of see how that makes it look like when I did the bright Mephiston red for the purity seals, how it contrasts with the book. Go with the handle, making sure I got all the angles. Now we're back to the Cantor blue, which is the dark blue that I use for some of my shoulder pads, and especially the cloth for anybody that has cloth. And I'm just kind of picking out the highlights and leaving the extreme recesses with that washed bit right here. Just kind of following the edge and just trying to guess where it will most likely work. I know a lot of the inside of the cape I'm going to completely ignore and just leave it as that dirty wash that way, but especially on like his tabard front part here versus the cape on the back, I'm just going to pick out those edges, leave the recesses the dark, and just see how well I can make that happen here. Since that part of the back of the cloak is more in the light, I figure I'll just highlight that a little bit more. But that's basically the blue of the cloak right there. I'm going to kind of leave that alone, maybe do a touch up in a little bit here. But now we got the bright green again to re-pick out those bright green spots, just even smaller than what I did originally to help that shine even more. Yeah, that's making a beautiful, beautiful green. And this bright green is a jungle green from Army Painter. And here we go. We got Wraithbone. Ooh, that pot was been sitting for a bit, so we had to make sure it really got shooken up there. And then I'm just for the Wraithbone or Xandri Dust. I can't remember exactly which one. I think this is the Wraithbone or Xandri Dust here, but that's a more of a bone color. Just did the skull, both the one on the ground that maybe that's a other person who got executed, and there's his head there. Now the sword had lost a lot of its purple brilliance here, so I figured let's try this again. Now I have the bright steel, maybe it'll shine a little bit more. Especially I wanted the Inquisition symbol to have that dark, dark purple to radiate, like it's radiating the power from that. And then just kind of feathering it out and fanning it out as best I can. Turning the blade into a purple, almost that purple power blade, purple lightsaber. You know, it's just, why not? Then I finally decided, we'll just go really, really dark, and I'll do another edge highlight with the bright steel and see how that goes from there. After letting everything dry, now it's time to get the bright greedy gold from Army Painter to brighten up all my gold details. So it's just picking out everything from the shoulder pads to the sword handle to the skull on the backpack, things like that. Then got to get it on the symbol there, leaving plenty of the wash recesses on it. So it kind of gives it that off gold, but still brilliant. Then we have my Averland Sunset, which I used for the shield. And I, at first, wanted to try something a little bit different with the white shield, do kind of like the gold main cross, and then instead of the 4 smaller crosses of the chapter symbol being white, kind of do them as a blue. But eventually, as you'll see, that didn't really work out because you think it's hard to see it on the camera now. It was even harder it was just as hard to see it in person on the shield when I was doing it. So Calidor Sky for the blue, like on the shoulder pads of a regular Marine. Just kind of thinned it out, really fine point, and just tried to make the little tiny, tiny, tiny plus signs in the corners. And I mean, it looked kind of good, but it just did not visually seem wow. I couldn't really see it from that far. I got some more of my Calidor, got it nice and thin. Kind of set it to the side here. Some Cantor blue. And then just kind of mix the two together here. And that blue I use for the extreme highlights on the cloak. So along the edges, any really, really high points on the cloak. It looks super duper bright, but remember Calidor Sky and that when they dry, they can be a brilliant but still rather dark blue, like Cantor blue. So that's why I mixed a little bit of the Cantor to kind of blend it in a little bit better with the cape here. And then using some of the green stuff that I used to help hold the arms into place. Some of it kind of spilled over, and I figured this would be great because that's where the tabard and the cape kind of hook underneath the shoulder pads there. So that's why I have it kind of like that and painting up over those so it actually blended flawlessly with it here. All right, now back to the shining silver. Since I had a little bit that was mixed, I figured let's do a brand new one right down here. And as you can see, it's super duper thin. I'm trying to get as much of a fine point control as I possibly can, and I'm going right along the edge of the sword. Just kind of feathering it out a little bit first. But I want it to be very bright, very, very thin, almost hard to see highlight of the sword there, as you can kind of see there with the light. And then when you do that, it kind of bleeds a little bit onto the blade. So I'm just making sure that that's as thin as possible, showing that there is a very sharp edge along this entire sword. But the inner core of the sword is still a purple blade, radiating that power, and kind of have it not so perfectly straight edges, kind of more jagged kind of a feel. So it looks like the purple is like sparking or a light fire on the blade. And then just doing a little bit of gold touch-ups near the blade there on the handle. Sorry, my hand covers it up pretty bad here. But doesn't that look neat? Okay, and here's the Xandri dust. Kind of do an edge highlight on the leather and to add some scratches and things for his bolt gun that he has. I think it's a heavy bolt gun that it's supposed to be, but either way, his handgun for some range shooting. Beautiful. All right, now we're back to Agrax. And just paint over the skeleton skull right there to kind of make it look more real, like it's a worn out bone. Take it off the base here so you can take a look a little bit better. Then here I just organize all my paints, push everything aside. And from here, I'm going to do the base, trim the base black. I'm trying to leave the, basically it's a gray primer, like an auto gray primer as the base, and then a Wraithbone Zenithal highlight from the top. And that's all I do on the base, and it kind of looks like you're on the surface of the moon with that. So that's how I got that moon looking base right here. It kind of washes out against the silver armor of my regular Marines, but with this black armor Marine, it's not too bad. So now I just kind of let that sit and dry on the palette for a second. And that is this the Marine right here. And as you can see on the shoulder, I ended up kind of, the tilt shield did a little repainted it kind of a blue stripe in the middle here to actually show off the chapter symbol on it, and did a little freehand here. But I just love how I did that power blade, how it looks like it's a flaming purple all around. And all in all, this guy was very fun to paint. this was my one of my first ever fully kit bashed models that I have assembled from nothing but my bits box and painted it up for an as a I can proudly say, yes, this is all 100% GW plastic, and it's a GW model, but it's made from my creation here. I'm going to leave down in the links below just how you can get that kit that I use so you can start kit bashing your own, and maybe some of the paints here. So please use my link below. That's how you can support the channel. I appreciate everything you guys do and tuning in with me on this video today. Until next time, I've been Mike, and this is Mike's Miniatures, and bye-bye.